This testimonial video is with Mike Kissack of America Adventure Expeditions. Him and his wife Amber have owned the business for about 15 years at this point, and we've been working together since this fall. Recently, their business took a bit of a change in which they went from running two locations to a single location. And when I originally started working with them, they had just finished up one season with that single location and were really looking to refine operations and improve profitability. So that's how we originally got connected in terms of our relationship. It is in the middle of the COVID-19 epidemic, so unfortunately Amber wasn't able to join us. However, Mike did cover all the basics in terms of where our relationship was started and the activities and the exercises that we have gone through in that time period from the fall to middle of April, which is the date of this recording. So this information and the evolution of our relationship is really the foundation for the online learning program that I've created, and that I will go through each of these steps with you. So this is an opportunity to learn from another outfitter who has been through the program and how he's been able to use the information learned through the program in application to his business. Enjoy it. So I'm here with Mike Kissack of American Adventure Expeditions out of Buena Vista, Colorado. And Mike, would you mind go ahead and giving us a little bit of background on who you are in your business?
Yeah. Like Zeb said, my name is Mike Kissack. I'm the owner of American Adventure Expeditions. We're located on the Arkansas River in Buena Vista, Colorado. We've owned American Adventure Expeditions for 15 years. We did not start it. The company's been around for about 30 years, so we bought it from the founder. Like I said, 15 years ago, my wife and I did. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And when we got started this fall working with each other, where were you guys at in that time of the season? And what were you anticipating to do with your business moving forward?
Yeah, when we started with you, Zeb, we were at a very interesting and transitional phase in our business. For the first 13 years, we had two separate locations, and we had just downsized. So we sold one of those locations. We'd run one season with just one outpost and had a successful year, but our finances were different, our operation was different, and we were kind of at, maybe call it the 2.0 of American Adventure Expeditions, the next phase. And so it was a really great time to get involved with someone like you, because it was such that transitional period of, okay, what does 2.0 American Adventure Expeditions look like? And financially everything kind of changed, and so it was just perfect timing to get involved with, like I said, someone like you, Zeb.
Great. And when we first got started, so what was one of the first exercises that we went through to help with laying out this 2.0?
One of the first exercises that you did was looking at our visions and our desires for what this business would do for us. And at first, you kind of want to get in and get into the nitty gritty right away and start looking at the numbers, but it makes sense to do that first, because owning a small business is such a personal experience, right? And we have to understand the bigger picture and what our dreams and our desires and what motivates us and why we're doing this in the first place. And so it's really nice that having laid that as the foundation, kind of the base of the relationship, we can always go back to those questions and those answers and those decisions and say, are we serving our bigger purpose? Are we accomplishing the goals that we set out in the beginning? And it's nice to know that, the financial side of a business is very important, and having the tools to understand that's very important. But if you're not utilizing those for a bigger picture, then why are you doing it? If you're not utilizing those tools to accomplish a bigger goal, then there's really no purpose in it. And again, it was really nice to start with that so that we had a place to jump off from and to always go back and reference when we're making decisions.
Great. And a little bit of background on that too. So when we start out the relationship, we go through a personal purpose, which is each of the owners defining really what is it that their personal interests are, as well as what their contribution would be into the business. We go through the ultimate dream, which is essentially the vision, and laying out what the plans are from 1 year from now to 10 years from now, and ultimately, like, what does that operation look like? So what's the day by day look like? What's the interaction of the customers? What are the experiences you're delivering? What's the relationship that you have with employees and guides and everyone else? As well as, what are you doing financially to get out of this business? So that is the needs assessment component. So when we're starting out that relationship, personal purpose, ultimate dream, needs, and that's where Mike has indicated all of this information we lay at the beginning, so we know what we're ultimately trying to achieve, and then the rest of the relationship and the rest of our efforts are guided by that direction. And those answers, a lot of times, as Mike said, help out with not only what do we get involved with, but what are the things that, as we're making decisions, may not necessarily be in line with our ultimate dream, and be able to say no to. So, a little background on that. With that, Mike, so following that initial, broader those discussions and laying that out, you said how you wanted to dive into the nitty gritty. So immediately following that, what were some of the other efforts that we've done since this fall and leading up to today?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you sign up for a program like this, you're looking at increasing the bottom line. Like that's the sales pitch that gets everyone to be like, yeah, I want to do that. I want to make more money. And so one of the first activities that we did, one of the first processes that we did after, developing our purpose, was looking at our expenses, and doing a big picture expense review. And sure, we look at our P&Ls all the time, but we don't really go through them with a fine-tooth comb like we should. This is kind of the low-hanging fruit opportunity to increase your bottom line, is just cutting some of those expenses. And we found with our experience that we run a pretty tight ship. And so we were really happy with that, to verify that, what we thought about the efficiencies of our company were there and they were real. We didn't find as many opportunities for savings in that area that we wanted to, but it did force us to look at some of the things that we had been putting off, some expenses that were probably higher than they should be, and just saying, oh, we'll deal with that next year. We don't really want to negotiate that right now. And when you go through it with a fine tooth comb and you start looking at like, wow, we're paying $200 more than we should every month over the course of the year. Like, that's $2,400, And so we did dive into some of those contracts and some of those relationships with other vendors and really talk to them about, what could we do to, again, lower those costs, and were there other options available to us? So things that we've been putting off for years, we definitely got in there and, like I said, made ourselves even more efficient and even more streamlined.
So did the expense review, really identified low-hanging fruit, looked at things after the season kind of more holistically to basically evaluate and see which was most important to us, what were helping you eventually in the broader scheme of things, and what was really unnecessary, right?
Exactly. And then again, going back to the first step, like when you're analyzing your expenses, you can ask yourself your questions like, does this help me accomplish my ultimate dream? And if the answer is no, it's a lot easier to cut that out or to make a change to it. Or if on the flip side, if it is helping you, it just justifies spending the money in that area. And so it makes you feel good about saying, yeah, we are spending money here. Maybe it's more than we would like to, but ultimately it's helping us to run the type of company that we want to, for us to have the type of environment that we're trying to have in our company.
It's looking at each of those items with intention and recognizing they're not just an expense, but they're actually an investment. So
Yes.
each line item on that profit and loss is an investment for the future, and making sure that that investment is in line with what you ultimately want to achieve.
Exactly.
You do run a tight ship, and when we initially did that, there was a little disappointment in terms of not finding those big wins, right? So, what was the next step that we went through to really evaluate the effectiveness of your spending and just broader operations?
The next step, and I'm not sure, I know the order that we did it in, and I
Yeah.
think we probably should have flipped the order of the two. But we started with a historical analysis of our company and looking at our um, profit margins, our cost of goods sold, over the history of our business. It was really nice. We had kind of the first 5 years of what it looked like, the second 5 years, and then the most recent 5 years. And then we also broke out just last season because that was our first year of operating with only one location. So it was nice to look at that historically and see trends that we lived through and we knew and we felt, but having the numbers back it up and look at it and be like, okay, I understand. Yeah, expenses were high this year. What was going on, in the environment, in the business that would explain that? And this year we were running very efficiently. Again, what was happening that year so that our cost of sales were lower than they normally are? And how do we get back there? How do we replicate that? So that was really nice. But what we found out is that our chart of accounts in general could use some tweaking. They could have been simplified. They could have been organized a little bit better. And, sub accounts, all these different, tactics that could be utilized to really make that information a lot easier to decipher and a lot easier to utilize. And so we went back and I don't want to say re-engaged with Zeb, but added that product on and said, hey, can you help us reorganize the chart of accounts? And he did that for us. And it took the historical data to the next level for us, making it, again, having it be presented in a manner that just made sense and that you could analyze at a 30,000 foot level if you wanted to, or you could get down into the weeds and look at every single line item if you wanted to. It just became such a more powerful tool for us, than it had ever been before. We always use the term analysis paralysis when you just have too much information and you're too deep in the weeds that you just kind of freeze and you don't know what to do. So again, the way that Zeb reorganized our chart of accounts is if we want to be down here, we can be. But if this isn't serving us, let's zoom out, let's get up here, let's get big picture and look at it as a whole and see what's going on. So if I were to do it all over again, I would have done the chart of accounts first and then the
Yeah.
historical analysis. But I think we had to do the historical analysis first to understand that our chart of accounts needed work. So,
Yep, and it's all learning lessons, right? Once we start looking at something, we get some more information, we discover that information, we accumulate it, we note different avenues and different trajectories to go down, and we use that information to continue to pursue. So what Mike is referring to with this chart of account restructure is we wanted to separate out the profit and loss to be revenue, cost of sales, and cost of sales are your direct expenses. So the expenses to essentially deliver on those sales, and then your operating costs, which are going to be really the business management expenses. So with a traditional chart of accounts is a lot of those costs of sales are all bunched into one section, and you just have your revenue and you essentially have your expenses. And where that's challenging is we don't have any correlation between sales and particular expenses. And as Mike said, it's like paralysis analysis, just looking at this monstrous pool. So by doing this chart of accounts, we removed a number of those items, such as guide wages, transportation costs, trip meals, all of those direct expenses in the cost of sales section. And from there, we were able to calculate out gross profit margin and some real mechanical components to help evaluate effectiveness and operations and spending, and then the operating expenses down below. So it's one of those elements of making your buckets smaller so you can evaluate each of your different buckets at a 30,000 foot level, which is the parent accounts, down to the 15,000 foot level, which is like sub accounts and those different categories, and then all the way down to the 1,000 foot level. And with that, there's abilities to make decisions moving forward and to improve really financial management. So thank you for that.
yeah.
And by doing that with that 5 year, first 5 years, second 5 years, and last year, what was it that you learned really with how you're managing your business, and what did you learn coming out of that exercise?
You know, the nice thing to see there is once they were organized in a manner that was just more digestible, and looking historically at what we've seen is we can pull out an average cost of sales. And so we can see in a business like ours historically, we kind of had this attitude of like, all right, we're going to do our best from a marketing standpoint and everything like that before the season, and we'll continue to market through the season a little bit. And then we had a couple of checkpoints throughout the year as far as how the season was progressing and how we were doing, but ultimately we didn't really know how we did until we got to the very end, until we crossed the finish line and said, okay, how are we doing? And a lot of times we'd say, man, we did better than we thought. We wish we would have invested during the summer, as opposed to waiting till the off season to see if we had any money. Or wish we would have had this information as we were going through the process. We would have done things a little bit differently. So having those historical trends and seeing if we're within, what we were hoping to be within as far as our cost of sales, then we can make decisions a lot better in real time, as opposed to waiting till the end of the season or the end of the year to see how we did. So having that data is going to be very, very useful for us, I can tell.
And even right now, right? So it is April 14th, 2020. Okay. We are in this whole pandemic scurry with COVID-19. Okay. That breakout and that information you're talking about and how everything's been separated, how have you been able to use that in response to and in preparation of this total unique disruption?
Yeah, I mean, this is a very unique situation. There's no question about it. Obviously, there's a lot of uncertainty involved, and there's some trepidation on our part, but it is way less than I think it traditionally would have been if we didn't have these tools in place already. So we can go in and confidently look at our books and say, let's spell out a couple of different scenarios, a couple of different projections on how this year could end up. What if we are unable to open the doors, whether that is because of a government mandate, because of another outbreak, or just because we've run the financials and it makes the most sense for us to close our doors and not incur any additional costs at this point. So we're able to do that with quite a bit of confidence. In addition, we're running other scenarios. What if we're operating at 40% of our last year's numbers? What if we're operating at 60%, 80%? And to really have the confidence of knowing, okay, historically, this is what our cost of sales have been, knowing, what all the line items of our expense of our P&L are. Again, I've been very involved with the finances and the accounting of our company for 14 years, 15 years now, but I understood it on an operational level of, okay, this is how you enter it into your accounting software. But I wasn't able to use it to make as many decisions as I would like to, and that I feel like I'm able to do now, having a better grasp on what all these numbers are trying to tell me.
So a better understanding, more confidence going through this issue, this whole disruption.
Yeah.
That separation too, right? The cost of sales, the operating costs, when it comes to scenario planning, having the information separated out like that has actually made this scenario planning almost effortless. And you can take an instance and like a question and be like, well, what if we were to be at 30% by November or by like July 4th? If we're at 30% by July 4th, we know the fixed costs, we know our cost of sales, we essentially know what our return would be at that point, right?
Right.
So we're able to use this information not just to help manage operations, but to project the future, understand break-even points, and be able to be intentional surrounding those decisions as we progress through all this. Would you agree?
Exactly. 100%. 100%.
Awesome. With that being said, so thank you. We spoke about, where we started this fall and the importance of really that dream and the purpose and how that becomes our GPS and leading us through these decisions, constantly reflecting on that. The different exercises that we've gone through up until this point and where you stand today, really leading into an unknown kind of terrain, unknown territory. hopefully falling out of this, I have total confidence in your guys' operation and getting through it by all means. This information is going to be absolutely invaluable in the future for retaining that income, improving profitability, and essentially getting out what you guys need as a family for retirement in the future, right?
Yeah.
Is there any advice that you would give to any other outfitters um, in growing profitable and thriving business based on what we've gone through, or just in general?
Yeah, for me, I've always, as a small business owner, you have to be kind of a jack of all trades. You have to be able to do a little bit of everything. But understanding your own personal strengths and weaknesses is very important, identifying that, and then finding professionals to incorporate into your team. They're not direct employees of yours, W-2s, but, I consider my accountant, my lawyer, my financial advisor as part of my team. And surrounding yourself with good people that understand and can teach you. I'm always open to learning and to getting better. And this has just been such a valuable tool. Like I said, there are times when you don't know that you need this, but in times of crisis, you're really happy that you have these relationships and these people to lean on. Zeb is, out of the goodness of his heart, just called me once a week basically to see, where are you at? What have you learned in the last 7 days? What new questions do you have? And that's just above and beyond, the contract that we have and our agreement. So, Zeb, I hope I'm not, backing you into a corner. You got to call everybody now.
No.
But
Yeah.
it's just good to know that you have people that care about you, people that are trying to really genuinely help you with your business. And, and again, it's helping us in this tough time, but in good times, it's going to help us as well, equally as much. So, yeah, that would be my advice is hire a good team, get good people around you. The cost up front can be intimidating at sometimes, and being able to see the return on investment is not, sometimes that's difficult to see and see how it's going to happen. But at the end of the day, if it's the right people and it's a good fit, it'll pay itself, in an X number of multipliers.
Well, very much appreciate that advice. It's absolutely sound. And, I have vested interest in you guys just as you do much me. So in times like these, it's all a matter of us getting together and utilizing our strengths to make sure that we all get through it together. So, Mike, much appreciated. Thank you so much for your time. If you watching this are interested in wanting more information, by all means, please feel free to reach out. I know Mike has even offered up being a resource to answer questions, and especially if you have questions around the relationship that him and I have, he'll be totally open and candid and be honest about how that's going and a support for you as well throughout your outfits. So thank you very much. And Mike, thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ed. Take care.
You too.